Hello, my fellow humans. I know what you're thinking. You saw the candle, you see the coffee. It seems like a setup video, right? Wrong. Today, I'm actually going to be doing a video that a couple of people very kindly requested. I'm so excited to be doing this. I hadn't thought of making this video, but it does make a lot of sense because every time I set up my bullet journal for a new month, I talk about how I mostly use it as a financial planner, but I don't think I've ever really mentioned specifically how I do that. So today, that's what we're gonna do. I have with me my handy dandy bullet journal. Today we are going to dive into this and see exactly how I plan my finances both yearly and also month to month. If you can hear Billy in the background playing with my little string lights that I have in my room, just ignore that. So the first thing I want to talk about as far as finances is my yearly spreads. I have several spreads that I make on a yearly basis that I keep in the front of my bullet journal. And if you watched my setup video for the year, you did see me start to construct these. And while I do want to show you how I do that, I am going to start by keeping these pages covered because there's a lot of personal information in here. You would know basically everything about how I budget and where my money goes. So I am going to keep that covered and just show you the categories. For the year, we have a bill schedule as well as a monthly budget. So this is where I start in the year. Bill schedule is going to be more for what I pay on a monthly basis, but specifically for utilities, for rent, if I have any credit card payments, if I have a subscription that I belong to, it all goes in here. On this side, I keep my actual budget. So how much goes to each category in my life. And I do have a few of those that I'm gonna go ahead and share with you today. So first for the bill schedule, I basically made a table in here where I focus on a few different things. First, I will look at the due date for the month, and the due dates I write down here in number order so that I know what's coming up for each paycheck. I get paid every 2 weeks, so the dates do vary. So this way I can make sure I'm paying what needs to be paid for each paycheck. Second, I put the company that I am paying that to, whether that is my landlord or whether that is the company that fills my propane tank in my yard. Then there is the amount that I typically pay for that service. And again, this does differ. If you have something that changes month to month, I would put either TBA for to be announced or a range, or sometimes I just like to put the high end of what it could be. That way I can overplan, and then if I have extra money, hey, that's the opposite of a problem. And then I also put the company's phone number just in case I need to get in contact with them. I say phone number, but I also have whether I typically contact them via email or a message on their website, just however I would typically get in contact with them. So this one really should read contact. There's only a couple of phone numbers on here. So I will show you this side. Here you can see I have the due dates for each thing that I pay in a month's time. That is how I do my bill schedule. On this side, it's a little bit more generalized. So monthly budget. I'll show you my first couple of categories just so you can get an idea. Basically, I have a few different categories in here. I have my housing, I have food and travel, subscriptions, debt, and miscellaneous. For example, for housing, if I move that down here, I'm not going to show you the amounts that I pay, but I will show you just what the categories are basically. So we go down here, I have rent. So obviously that goes under housing. I also have shelter, which is my insurance company. Then I have my water payment and my electric payment. And then down here, food and travel, same deal. Groceries, gas, anything else that might go under there. And then we get down to where I have my subscriptions. And from there, I'm not actually going to show you just because I don't want to go to the effort of blurring this entire page. So that is what I'm going to show you on the monthly budget and the bill schedule. Next, I'm going to show you my debt snowball. So if you're like me and you have student loans, credit cards that you got in college when you didn't realize how big of an issue they were for you, or that kind of thing, you are trying to get out of debt, which is very difficult, and I feel for you. So this is where I track payments that I have made to those things. So I'm not going to show you every category on this page, but I am willing to show you one credit card that I have, and that is my TJ Maxx credit card. This is how much I have owed on my TJ Maxx card, and the little X's represent when I make a payment that equals that amount of money. But also with a snowball, the first one that you want to work on, it's typically your smallest debt. And then as you pay that first one off, you move on to your next smallest and your next smallest and your next smallest, all the way up to your biggest amount. You put any money that you had been paying on this first one onto the next one, along with that minimum payment. You basically make larger and larger payments on larger and larger debts, and you have the satisfaction of paying off things quickly, which does boost your credit score, and it makes you feel accomplished. So I have chosen to do the debt snowball method. There's also a debt avalanche, where instead of going smallest to largest, you do the highest interest to the lowest interest. And that way you probably end up saving a lot more money, but I personally need the instant gratification of seeing my balances go down. So that's why I do the debt snowball. So that is all I do for yearly budget planning and finance tracking, but I do keep track of day-to-day things just in my monthly spreads. So let's turn there next, and you are actually going to come with me as I set up my financial pages for the April spreads that I just did. Now for this portion of the video, I have moved you in just a little bit closer so you can really see what I'm doing here. Onto this next page, you'll see that I have my paycheck planning pages. And this is where I will take each paycheck that I'm gonna get in a month. And for this particular month, I do have 3. We get paid every 2 weeks on a Thursday. So the 1st, the 15th, and the 29th are all paycheck days for me. So let me grab my pencil here, and I'm gonna show you how I sort of split all this up. Now I'm gonna grab the pens that I use to make this setup, and we're going to actually divide each of these up into smaller sections. Let me do that real quick, and I'll explain what those sections are for. Okay, we'll pretend that line is straight, and that one. Okay, I don't know what happened with this pink. These are definitely not straight lines, but anyway, we will move on. So in the spirit of the minimalist setup that I did for this month, I'm not going to actually put headers like I typically would for each of these categories, because I kind of know what I'm doing by now. But for example, let me move my coffee cup so I can get you guys a good view of this page here. We are going to go ahead and look at the first paycheck that I'm getting this month. So every paycheck, I do have a list of my expenses, and I put them here. And I put everything that is coming out of that paycheck. Stop it, children. And the date that it's coming out. So the day that it is coming out goes here in this column in order. Next, I will put what that item is in this column. In this column, I do the amount. There are 5 spaces here because I include the cents. I do it as precisely as I can. And then over here, this is whether or not it has been paid. This section is for notes. So typically I make notes as far of if that paycheck isn't quite enough to cover my bills for those 2 weeks. Do I need to pull something out of savings? And if so, I will put the math for that here, but you will actually see some of that in a minute, because I believe this first paycheck, which is my rent paycheck and therefore the most expensive paycheck I have in a month, I believe I will actually owe more for this paycheck than I get in this paycheck, if that makes sense. But I will show you here in a second. So for example, let's go ahead and work with the paycheck that I will be getting on the 1st of this month. So for example, I'm gonna make up the amounts here, but I will put kind of what I actually do have to pay for this paycheck. Let's say my first item here, and this is where I would refer back to the due dates that I mentioned over here. I would put the due date of each item. So for example, the first item that I have on my list is my tithe. On the 1st is the paycheck, so the 1st is the date that I'm going to put the tithe, and this item is tithe. How much is that tithe? Again, I will be making this up, but let's say it's $100. Okay, so then we won't do anything here because this is going to be once it's paid, and I will check that off so I know what needs to be coming out of the money I have left. But let's move on to the next item. So next I'm going to say I'm going to need gas. I will not really put a date on that because I'll need it several times throughout those 2 weeks. $70 for gas for these 2 weeks. The next one is food. And again, this doesn't actually have a due date, so I'm not going to put a due date. And if you're wondering, the reason I do it in this order is because tithe, gas, and food are the constants on every paycheck that I have. So I do list them first, even though gas and food don't actually have the next numerical due dates. You can obviously put your items in whatever order you want, but this works really well for me. So I'm going to run down the rest of these real quick. Okay, so now that we've taken these things and written them down here, what I do is I leave some space just in case I've forgotten something, and I'll go back over this a couple times to make sure I don't forget. I will come down here and add them all up and get myself a total. So for this paycheck, the amount that I'm going to be responsible for is $1,247. So what I was saying about savings and this part right over here. So typically, let's say that I get about $1,000 every paycheck. Obviously, there's some money there that I don't already have. That is where I will have overflow from previous paychecks when maybe my bills didn't meet what that paycheck gave me, so I put the rest in savings. So let's say in savings right now, I have $700. $700 is sitting in my savings account. Obviously, I only get $1,000 on a paycheck, so $247 has to come out of savings. Think of this more as an overflow account, not as a savings account, because truthfully, that is sometimes how I have to use my savings. If you are somebody like me who likes to have an account where you can have that overflow, maybe have two savings accounts, or like me, I actually have two checking accounts so that I can transfer freely between my overflow account and my checking account if I need a little bit of extra money, but I'm not disturbing money that I've truly been trying to save. So just an idea. We need that $247. So I will literally write all of this out just over here, very analog, very pencil and paper, nothing digital for me. I like to see everything. And if we do the math really quickly, that amount that we would have left is $453. So this is what is still in savings. So over here, I might put a note like need and left. I need an extra, let's round it to $250. Left in savings after that happens is about $450. I will use this spot for notes like that. So I know how much I'm still going to have in savings, and I know how much I'm going to need to pull from savings. That is how I use these paycheck pages. And then as I pay my bills, I write them on the next page, which we'll play with in a minute, but I go ahead and check off so that I know that it is at least written down, so that I can use this page right here to see what I can already account for. As soon as I have written it on this page, as soon as I have even planned for it to come out, I check it off, because then I know that I've already accounted for that and I can move on. So now we're going to switch to checking. Like I was saying, I use this page to keep track of everything item by item that happens in my checking account. Like I said in my setup video for this month, that is what I use like for everything. I'm trying to move away from credit cards. I don't usually carry cash. It's just something I don't really do. So checking is used almost daily, frankly. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but it's what I do. Over here is the date. Here we're going to put the company or source of that purchase. This is going to be specifically what the purchase was. And then here will be the amount that the purchase was. And over here is the balance forward. So balance going forward from when I made that purchase. So say at the end of last month, my checking account was sitting at $687.24. It wasn't, but let's just pretend it was. Whatever we put in these boxes as a purchase gets taken out of that, and that is the balance going forward, which is why this is so important to me. Let's say on the 1st, I went ahead and made my tithe. The app that my church uses is Church Center. So Church Center is the actual company that I made the transaction with. So here I would put what it was. It was my tithe. And then what did we say? $100. So I will put minus $100. I do a plus and a minus so that I'm very clear on what's happening and I don't confuse myself. So minus $100 from the total. And that leaves me with $587.24. and I put it in the middle so that when it has actually hit the account where I can see it on my bank account, which I check daily, I will check it off. So that stays blank until it has actually reflected on my account. That is how I use this. So every single thing that I do or that is coming up, sometimes I will write them ahead of time. I will write it here so that I can account for it in my balance and not double spend that money. And once I have written it down, it doesn't have to have posted yet. I just need to have it written down. I will come over here, and this was the tithe, check, yes, okay, I've accounted for that money. And that is truly how I don't overspend, because I am someone who, if you give me, oh, I don't know, say a $1,400 stimulus check, I could have that bad boy spent in 15 minutes. I could probably have it spent in less if I accessed my Amazon wish lists, but it is really easy to spend money, and living on my own this past year and a half, couple of years, has really shown me that, and I'm really working on getting better. These 2 pages are truly what keep me sane, along with those yearly pages that I showed you before. And this is really all I do. And as far as extra expenses, so let's say things where it's not going to happen very often, it's like twice a year or something, like my cat's getting their shot. And that's not something that I do every month, so how am I going to remember that? That, my friends, is what your future log is for. Say you have something like an expense that's only going to happen a couple times a year. For me, it's cat shots. So here I have, in August, get Yuri his shots. Yuri is my big boy tuxedo cat. He's wonderful, and he gets shots in August. If you have anything that you are not, gonna remember way down the road, or anything that is just really weird and isn't something you typically have an expense around, then just put it here. And when you're making your plans for that month, you can look at this. If you have the date for it, specifically, you can obviously put it there. But yeah, this is what I do. And it works really well for me, actually. So I really hope that was helpful to you. If you are someone who struggles with finances the way I do, or you're just looking to track everything a little bit better, again, like me, those are just some spreads that I find really helpful. I'll go ahead and make a quick list of them on the screen here, as well as put that list in the description, just if you want quick reference. But I had gotten a couple of requests from people to be more specific with my finance spreads, so I wanted to make this. Feel free to give it a like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications if you want to know every time I upload. It's typically on Thursdays, but sometimes life happens and it's on Fridays, so just bear with me there. Oh, thank you, Yuri. Don't mind him. This is Yuri. Have a great day.